What is going on, guys? It's Yoji. As a support player in almost all games I play, be it MOBAs, MMORPGs, or sometimes even single player games, I would be lying if I tell you the experience is always positive. While I love supporting, being the one who protects the carries, the guy behind the scenes pulling all the strings so others can succeed, the tank or healer who cannot screw up or else the whole raid will fail. However, more often than not, the carries take all the praise when things do work out, which wouldn't be as bad if it wasn't for the support getting all the blame when things go wrong. But what if I told you there is a place where supports are still appreciated, where whenever people see you come online, they will message you to play with you because you are a support. And yes, that place is Path of Exile. But not only are supports wanted and treated nicely in this game, they are insanely strong, which is probably the reason why people want them in their party and actually treat them with respect. Anyways, I have done up to tier 14 maps without any problems, including most map bosses, farmed Winter Square and other high-end content very safely on my support. So let me present to you the strongest character I have ever played in Path of Exile, my support Guardian, aka the Tankmaker. While this build is very strong, let me give you a few disclaimers. First of all, this is not a budget-friendly build, as it relies on using a lot of unique items to work in Endgame. This is also not a beginner-friendly build, but if you think you have played beginner-friendly builds for long enough and are willing to try to dig a bit deeper, this might be a good point to start if the support playstyle is interesting to you at all. It is also mainly a defensive support, with focus on auras. While I am also multi-cursing, this is not where the focus of the build is. There are better curse supports out there, and there are better DPS supports out there. But for defensive aura support, this is about as good as it gets. This Guardian will make a softcore build in his party hardcore viable just by standing next to him. Once spec'd into full support, this build is not able to solo most content anymore. While this means you will need people to play with, it gets more and more easy to find them as you go along. Especially experienced player will seek you out and want to play with you a lot, because they know how powerful supports are for really pushing the highest tiers of maps. This can be a great way to learn more about the endgame of Path of Exile. And you do not have to play in a full group at all, by the way. Usually, running with 1 or 2 people who deal damage is enough to be able to clear all types of maps and bosses. So if your PC cannot handle a full party, don't worry. A small party works fine. And I actually prefer that, as it is easier to keep track of everything that is going on the screen. So party play is what this character excels at. He will provide the defenses for your party to safely push through very dangerous map mods as well as higher tier maps than they normally would be able to run. This helps greatly with map pool sustain and having to spend less currency to roll maps. So let's have a look at which stats and buffs this character provides for himself and the party members around him. First of all, we have a look at the Guardian Ascendancy class. The passive Radiant Faith grants you and your party 160% of life reserved as armor. So obviously we want to reserve as much life with auras as possible. This is a flat armor bonus which can be scaled further by auras such as Determination and armor passives on the passive tree. My character reserves 1200 life, which results in a flat armor bonus of 1920. That is an extra armor chest piece and not a bad one at that. The same passive also grants flat energy shield equal to 15% of mana reserve, again to you and your party members. So we also want to reserve as much mana as we possibly can. This flat energy shield bonus can also be scaled by any ES passives and will end up granting any ES build a ton of energy shield, even though a flat amount of around 150 does not sound like too much initially. This also means picking up mana on gear and the tree will grant you and your party energy shield, and picking up life will grant armor. Next Guardian node is Radiant Faith. For each aura we have up, everyone in the party, including ourselves, gets 1% physical damage reduction and 0.5% life regeneration. This means we want to run as many auras as possible, and this of course goes very well with wanting to reserve most of our mana and life with auras. I am currently running 10 auras. That is 2% life regeneration and 10% physical damage mitigation for everyone around me and my Guardian. The range of this is about until the edge of your screen, so everyone you can see and everyone who can see you benefits from this bonus. To achieve that many auras and reserve most of our life, we will of course be playing a low life build. As most gear slots of this build are filled by uniques and we want to reserve as much life as possible, we need a Chevron's wrappings, which will prevent us from dying to chaos damage before we run out of energy shield. And there isn't really a way around it, as we are already struggling to get shield on gear, and chaos resistance would be even harder to get, as we are running so many unique items. To maximize the amount of auras we can run, I run a Prism Guardian shield. This means giving up a lot of ES on the shield slot, but it allows us to run auras that we put in it at 25% reduced mana reserved, and it makes them have blood magic, without having to use the blood magic gem, which normally has a huge mana more multiplier attached to it. This basically adds 2 auras to our setup. And they all get +2 to levels, which is huge. For the same reason I am also running the Alpha's Howl helmet. It grants +2 to socketed aura gems, makes all auras have 8% reduced reservation, and makes us immune to freeze. Getting frozen is a problem for low life builds, so having that is a welcome bonus. This setup allows me to run Determination for the armor multiplier, Grace for a lot of flat evasion, and Discipline for a huge boost to energy shield in my Prism Guardian. I also run Vitality on Blood Magic in my boots or gloves. In my Alpha's Howl, I am running Purity of Lightning, Purity of Fire, and Purity of Cold to boost my party's elemental resistances up to 81, and I am also running Haste to speed things up. The aura passives Serenity, Charisma, Leadership, and Influence make our auras 64% more effective than they normally would be, which is an insane bonus. This aura effectiveness also applies to Vaal auras, like Vaal Haste or Vaal Discipline. I linked those with increased duration and spec the potency of Will Cluster for increased skill effect duration as well. On top of that, I use the Atziri's Rain unique jewel, which grants up to 20% increased Vaal skill duration and multiple of these stacks, so you can run up to 4 of them in this build if you want to. In this specific jewel socket, I run Energy from Within to convert the life on the hybrid cluster to energy shield as well. Other good jewel choices for this build are, for example, Conqueror's Efficiency or rare jewels with mana, life and energy shield on them. Skill effect duration also affects war cries, by the way. The Ascendancy passive Prayer of Glory grants a haste effect to everyone around you whenever you use a war cry. You can either use Rallying Cry to buff everyone's damage a little bit, or run Enduring Cry to gain endurance charges. And as I have the Conduit Keystone, I share those charges with the party. Enduring Cry also grants a short burst of life regen, which works greatly with Zealot's Oath, a keystone this build is also running. With Enduring Cry up, I regenerate over 1000 energy shield per second. When running Conduit, a great way to buff your party's crit builds is to use the Romira's Banquet Ring. It grants you power charges whenever you do not crit, and those charges are then shared via Conduit. And its downside does not affect your party members at all. It only removes your charges, but you're not dealing damage anyways. After all these passive buffs and charges, the build can also debuff enemies with multiple curses. To do so, we skill Whispers of Doom and use one Doedri's Damning Ring. We also pick up Skittering Runes and Hexmaster for curse duration and effectiveness. This allows for triple cursing if you have a 5-link. In high maps, 2 of them will usually be Temporal Chains and Enfeeble, just for safety. The third one will be an offensive curse depending on the builds your party members are playing. The most effective way to apply those curses is a Curse on Hit setup, using the Curse of Hit gem and a spell of your choice. Popular spells for cursing are Ball Lightning, Bladefall, Arc, Firestorm, among others. Personally, I like Ball Lightning best, but this is playstyle dependent. You can also apply Elemental Equilibrium with your spell if the damage type of your spell is different from the elemental damage your party does. A trick you can use is you can spec into Avatar of Fire to convert all your damage to fire damage if you are, for example, using a lightning spell to apply curses, but your party is mostly doing lightning damage. You can also not use Elemental Equilibrium if your party doesn't benefit from it anyways. For example, if everyone is doing chaos damage. If you have a 6-link Shavs, you can add a 4th curse by either replacing your Ramira's with a second Doedri's Damning, giving a power charge generation for another curse, or you corrupt your amulet to allow for an additional curse. Talking about the amulet, I use an Eye of Chiyula to be stun immune. As stun is based off of your max HP, it can be a huge problem for low life builds. Alright, with all these uniques we are using, we have only 3 gear slots left to cap resistances and get some more energy shield. The weapon, gloves and boots. So get as much ES and whatever resists you need on your boots and gloves. For weapon, I use an Ephemeral Edge. A top roll grants you 50% increased energy shield. While in endgame, this build is extremely powerful and can facilitate endgame content a great deal. Leveling to that point requires you to either have a group to level with and rely on, or you level as a spellcaster, either using Bladefall or Spark and Orb of Storms, as both are extremely strong for leveling at the moment. I also recommend leveling as life-based, not ES-based. This means you will have to do some respecking later on. I recommend not speccing into low life until you are fully ascended, as running the lab can be a pain as a low life build. Depending on how much you are willing to invest into respecking, you can even become a Hierophant temporarily, just for leveling. I'll put an example passive tree for Spark Orb of Storms leveling into the video description, as well as the endgame Guardian Support passive tree I am using right now. For the Bandit quest in Act 2, help either Oak, Alira, or take the passive point in normal, depending on whether you want ES, armor, or flexibility for later on. In Cruel, take the skill point, and in Merciless either help Oak or get the skill point as well. If you want to give party play a go, and you like the idea of helping other people's characters to unlock their fullest potential in endgame, try a support. It is extremely strong, possibly the strongest build archetype in the game right now. My support Guardian is currently level 92 in Piranha's Hardcore, and it is a lot of fun and very rewarding to play. Subscribe if you enjoyed this video. You can find more guides and other videos on my YouTube channel. I am Yoji, and I will see you soon.